Good evening, Vision Exchange. Thank you all. Thank you all. Thank you all. Welcome to those of you who are here with us for the first time, and welcome back. And welcome back to you more usual suspects, to Aspen Meadows and to being in community with your Ascend, at the Aspen Institute family. Very important order of business off the top is as you finish your entrees, the lovely catering staff who always take such good care of us will have desserts and coffee on the table just along those windows over there. So as you wrap your entrees, please feel free to help yourselves. And thank you as always to the catering staff for keeping us nourished. I would like to extend a handful of very important and special thank yous just off the bat here before we get started. First, to the people for providing the soundtrack for our evening here. So you heard from Jordan McCoy, whose last name you should recognize. Thank you, Jordan. And if you don't recognize Jordan's last name, just open your email, and you definitely should. Nayo Muyanga welcomed us during our reception as well. Nayo will be honoring us with his presence throughout the week, so Nayo, thank you as well. And then finally, certainly, the Roots of Music. The Roots of Music empowers young people in my native New Orleans through music education, through academic support, and through mentorship, while preserving and promoting the unique musical and cultural heritage of our city. And so young men from the Roots of Music, thank you for honoring us with your gifts. Also in our number this evening are several members of our broader Aspen Institute community. We certainly appreciate you all's ongoing support of the leadership represented in this room and appreciate the opportunity to deepen our collaboration across Aspen Institute programs. So thank you all so much for being here with us as well. And last but certainly not least, we'd like to thank our philanthropic partners. Your ongoing support and partnership are what makes gatherings like this possible. And it fuels the work that we're able to do alongside the awesome leaders represented in this room. And so thank you. Know that we couldn't do it without you. And we hope that this week reaffirms your excitement to be part of this here good trouble. So thank you all. Our hope for this gathering, as is true every time we gather, is that you find whatever it is that you need to fortify yourselves for the journey ahead. And as always, we continue to invite you to and learn from you all how to do that with reverence for all that has and all that continues to sustain us. Our ancestors, our loved ones and relatives, the original inhabitants of Colorado's western slope, the Utes, and most certainly the land itself. And so in that spirit, here's an offering of just a few seconds of silence for you all to honor whatever you feel moved to in whatever ways that feel right to you. In addition to the many important and helpful things that you'll find in that Hoover app that I know you all have downloaded and are familiar with, you'll find a resource linked to this opening session that'll provide more information on the history and presence of the Utes here in Colorado. We extend our appreciation to Mr. Ernest House at the Keystone Policy Center and an enrolled member of the Ute Mountain Ute Tribe for pointing us to that resource. Before I leave you all in the very capable hands of a few others to help set the tone for our time here together, I'd like to share with you all an offering of Eagle Poem by Joy Harjo. To pray, you open your whole self, to sky, to earth, to sun, to moon, to one whole voice that is you. And know that there is more that you can't see, can't hear, can't know except in moments steadily growing and in languages that aren't always sound, but other circles of motion. Like eagle that Sunday morning over Salt River, circled in blue sky and wind, swept our hearts clean with sacred wings. We see you, we see ourselves, and know that we must take the utmost care and kindness in all things. Breathe in, knowing we are made of all this, and breathe, knowing we are truly blessed because we were born, and die soon within a true circle of motion. Like eagle, rounding out the morning inside us, we pray that it will be done in beauty, in beauty. And now please direct your attention to the screen to my left for a welcoming message from a longtime supporter of our work and of prosperity and well-being for children and families.
Hello, everyone. This is Governor J.B. Pritzker, and I'm excited to welcome you to VisionXChange 2025. As governor of Illinois, I've worked alongside countless state leaders to answer a critical question: how do we build opportunities that last for every generation? As you know, at the Aspen Institute, there's a common understanding that we need to invest in whole families, both children and parents, with a two-generation approach. It's an ambitious undertaking that has helped drive more than $500 million into two-gen initiatives, touching the lives of over 15 million families. And we're just getting started. Thank you to Ascend and the Aspen Institute for convening this extraordinary group of leaders. With federal funding at risk, leaders at every level have the opportunity and obligation to bring all their skills to bear. Together, we can stand up to national challenges and prove that smart policy, grounded in equity and compassion, can move us all forward. I hope VisionXChange sparks ideas, builds new connections, and reminds you of the power you hold as champions for families. We're building something that will withstand the storm and move us forward. And that all starts with you.
And now please join me in welcoming to the stage President and CEO of the Aspen Institute, Dr. Dan Porterfield.
Thank you, James. It's good to see the group back again for this summer. This convening has now become a core part of our Aspen summer offerings, and really all summer long, in the spirit of our founders who wanted to build a more free, just, and equitable society. We've been gathering groups here day after day, week after week. In fact, Governor Pritzker, this is his second Aspen event in a week because he also opened our event, Aspen Ideas Climate, which is focusing, as you can imagine, on all the different issues we need to attend to as a globe on that topic. And but this one is so powerful because you represent the developing and growing ecosystem organized around an idea. There may be a couple of those ideas even that bring you here today, but this is what we need to be doing as an organization, is providing a framework, a place, a community, welcoming with open arms women and men who are trying to make this world a better place and are cultivating in yourselves the will and the skill to do that. It's a lot of fun for me to look here and see Katie Albright, who's a member of our Board of Trustees. She's Ascend Fellow from the inaugural unnamed class. There's still time. And Katie's mom, Madeline Albright, was probably our greatest trustee. Among all the many wise things she said and passed on to us, one thing that I think about a lot, that I think represents the Ascend spirit, she was paraphrasing the poet Robert Frost, but she said, "The older I get, the younger my mentors become." And I think that's part of our spirit here today. And Madeline is a part of our spirit very much here. I'm also excited that a newer colleague, Stace Lindsay, is here. And that's Stace sitting back there. He's about 6'4" when he's not sitting down. You'll see him. And Stace is our executive vice president for leadership. It's a new role that's working to connect the dots, a favorite Madeline term, across the Institute among the thousands and thousands and thousands of people who are exercising leadership in all sorts of ways and places, very often at the grassroots, and not only at the leadership of institutions or of movements. And so Stace will be moderating here today. He's moderated something like 2 years worth of Aspen seminars over his lifetime. And I'm excited because in part because I think that the Ascend Leadership Group has so much to offer if we can figure out how to make it all work to the full Aspen leadership community and vice versa. It's already happening. Ascend Fellows keep winning our prestigious McNulty Prize, so it's happening. But what more can we do? And especially in your communities, there are so many other people that have walked through an Aspen doorway and program, and like you know, raise their hand for the assignment, to challenge themselves, to go deeper in our understanding of leadership. It might be community college presidents, it might be local business leaders, it might be people elected like Melvin, but there's a lot of people that have been shaped by this method of having a dialogue that builds understanding, and then from that understanding to promote new possibilities for a better world. And we really do believe, you do of course, that the dialogue for understanding is a necessary part of the journey. And sometimes we're in such a race, of course, to deal with the fierce urgency of now that we just say we've got the answer, let's go. But we all benefit when we have that little extra time to take a breath, maybe inspired by a reading, or certainly inspired by the diversity of voices and experiences around a table. Say, what can I learn here today if I just open myself to the possibility that there's another way to look at the work I'm so committed to? And this idea of an ecosystem organized around an idea is one of the ways I believe the Aspen Institute is, you know, like in Star Wars, the Force. Because we have here and in other programs, highly principled, highly effective leaders coming together both to advance their work, but also to create the conditions where others' work can flourish. Maybe the idea here is the 2-gen idea. Maybe the idea is that there is talent evenly distributed in every community, but opportunity is not. Maybe the idea is that there is inherent and beautiful dignity in each and every person. Maybe the idea is that the older we get, the younger our mentors are. But there are these core beliefs you have, and you're now building a community and an ecosystem around them. One of our other programs, the College Excellence Program, has done this around one idea, that students who are from lower income backgrounds have a great deal to offer the highly selective, prestigious institutions where they've been systematically underrepresented across the history of American higher education. And a group of presidents gathered together maybe 8 years ago, 9 years ago, thinking, well, each of them were making a difference in the increasing enrollment of Pell Grant students on their own campuses. But would it be helpful, instead of kind of competing against each other, to say, well, whose college is the most advanced in expanding opportunity? What if they competed together in order to help each school make even more progress, both in enrolling and graduating students, of course, but actually just as important in facilitating belonging and success in students when they're on a college campus. So this group, it's called the American Talent Initiative, has about 130 of the top universities in it. And it's a collective impact project, a little more formally organized towards one goal than here, but it's an ecosystem organized around an idea. Let's expand opportunity to talented students from underrepresented communities. And there are schools, big and small, north, south, east, and west. All the highly selective schools are in it. We set a goal about 8 years ago. Could we get 50,000 more Pell Grant students enrolled, regularly enrolled, not just coming in, but there and graduating from schools that have high graduation rates? The whole Ivy League, the public flagships, the schools like Caltech and Duke and others. That was our goal, 50,000. I'm sure that most of you are from places that have schools in this program. And the presidents all raised their hands and said, I'll do it. And they started working together, sharing what they were learning. And it turned out that, for example, the University of Dayton created this incredible partnership with Sinclair Community College, and now they're dual enrolling students in both. And all the other presidents are looking at their community colleges saying, well, maybe we can do that too. And then another one is University of Michigan, and they said, we need to offer all-state tuition scholarships so that students from all income groups could say, I know I can afford University of Michigan. They call it the True Blue Pledge or something. And now a bunch of other schools are doing their version of the True Blue Pledge. And it's interesting when people get together, forming an ecosystem where they're sharing these ideas. What can we do together? Turns out they created a working group of a bunch of presidents working on community college transfer. How can we get more two-year students to four-year schools without losing credit? Another group focused on veterans. How can we make sure that we are tapping that talent of lived experience and tremendous responsibility and get more veterans in schools where, unfortunately, there's nowhere near enough right now? So we did all this ecosystem building, and it's really been interesting how it has paid off, although not evenly. We had, when COVID hit, the enrollment of low-income students dropped in these top schools. The UC system, the University of California system, lost a lot of students during COVID. And so that 50,000 goal looked a long ways away. But then, still, we saw progress. An interesting one is the University of Washington. Washington University in St. Louis. Interesting because the New York Times did a poll of top schools with Pell Grant student enrollment, and Washington University was last of all the schools in the whole country. They had like 8% Pell Grant enrollment. And they weren't happy about that. They were upset. It didn't speak to the ideals that they profess. So they joined this thing, the American Talent Initiative, and they started making just a little progress. They went like to 11%. And they designed a program so they were much more welcoming. And that was very important because the students they were bringing in bigger numbers felt they should be there. They kept going. They started a program with the high schools in St. Louis. They kept going and put more money into financial aid. They kept going and hired somebody to oversee it all. Steady, incremental steps. There's nothing wrong with incremental steps towards a vision that they would become a very inclusive private university. And then in 2021, I think it was 21, it might have been 22, their endowment went through the roof, skyrocketed. And they took $1 billion from that endowment and put it all in financial aid. All those little steps prepared them to be able to take a giant step when the conditions were right. But if they hadn't done that, I don't know if you're a WashU alum, but if they hadn't taken those little steps, if they hadn't readied their community, when they had that windfall in their endowment, they might have put it into buildings or something. So all these presidents and their staffs try to work together, and it's an ecosystem organized around this idea. Some of these presidents are becoming really good friends right now, and they're helping each other in a perilous time. Because a number of institutions, the most prominent ones, as you know, have been under an assault as the federal government seeks to achieve certain kinds of changes on campus by basically attacking every single revenue stream these schools have, whatever it is. Their nonprofit status, their endowments returns, their enrollment of international students. It's pretty systematic. Their research, reimbursements, everything in a few places has been either put on hold or really dialed back. And these presidents, who used to be competitors against each other, are now also really leaning on each other a lot. The president of Princeton University's name is Chris Eisgruber. I mention him because he's written some articles about the status. Where are we now? So I say all this to say that building an ecosystem organized around a deeply humane and important idea or set of ideas will pay off in that long walk towards a more just society in ways that you'll feel, but you won't even be able totally to predict. Because what you build here as part of this community will play out in your work and well beyond it. And for that, we really thank you because you're living the ideals of the Aspen Institute, and you're teaching us what more we can do to be a good nonprofit organization, people-serving and community-loving. So thank you all for being here, and now I am delighted to invite Ann Mosle, our founder, to the stage.
Thank you. Little Ascend meets Aspen improvisation. Ooh, so just got to give love to Alicia. Yes. But just, we had a little improvisation because that's what we do, because we've got so much magic in this room. So Neo and Jordan, like, your family. So just joining in, and I just really psyched to be here with all of you. And so my dreamers, my doers, my good friends, this community, just what a gift it is to be here in the spirit of gratitude and community. And in that spirit, just, a shout out again to Roots of Music, our friends from NOLA, our own fantastic James White, for bringing some music and some meaning to the start of our evening and of our time together, and also bringing a little bit of kind of the NOLA Big Easy here to us at Aspen Meadows. Dan, thank you so much for your comments and your leadership of the Aspen Institute, and for being with us tonight as we begin a very significant and special gathering during a really critical year. And while the Aspen Institute is celebrating 75 years in its history, we at Ascend are really reflecting very deeply on what does it mean to stand in tradition while moving toward transformation. And so, huge gratitude and love and welcome to our Ascend community for being you, for showing up. Here tonight we have the beating heart of the Ascend Fellowship Network, but yet we're more than just a network. We're a force, 1,000 strong, driving change with, for, and by more than 15 million families across America and beyond. You each are bold leaders, you're trusted messengers, and you are builders of a new future, working wherever there are children and families. And tonight, more than 160 of you, fellows, artists, funders, parent advisors, and national leaders, you have converged here in this room at this time to chart the next chapter. We are here to turn up the volume on a unified moment and movement that ensures that intergenerational family economic mobility and well-being is growing, not shrinking. Yes, right direction. Our theme for this year's Vision Exchange is unstoppable, a word that speaks to both the urgency of the moment and the power of this community. And when you hear the word unstoppable, what comes to mind? Anything from maybe it's a toddler discovering their legs, careening forward with purpose and no intention of slowing down. Maybe it's a person who is so aligned with their purpose and their people, there is no amount of resistance that can knock them off course. Or maybe you think of the natural world, the ocean, the wind, the glaciers that carve the very valleys that we are standing in now. Forces that once in motion keep going, keep evolving. We're living through a moment of profound disruption and dissonance, where momentum isn't always aligned with the hopes and dreams of our children and families, the realities and the resilience of our communities, or the ideals of our country. But we're undeterred. Ascend was built for this moment. And we know that change is not easy under the best of times. And without question, these are not the best of times. It's easy to get discouraged, or worse, give up. Yet as leaders, we know that during these times of great challenge, we do have some of the biggest opportunities for bold breakthroughs. Our country and our community are hungry for leaders they can trust. Leaders who can deliver a better way forward. Now is the time to state clearly what we are for. And stand in that conviction. Being here gives us the chance that we don't often get. We are surrounded by like-hearted, differently minded people. That is our strength. We can learn so much from each other. So I invite all of us to get out of the day-to-day chaos, step up on the balcony, and see clearly our shared promise, purpose, and power. As you all know, the Ascend Fellowship was founded to create a space for examination of self and society together. For more than a decade, Ascend has curated lovingly amazing cohorts of leaders who share a North Star, but who come from very different disciplines and domains. All of you were at an inflection point in your journey, and we invited you to take a quantum leap, not just individually, but collectively. And you all continue to ask bold questions of yourselves and the world around you, and to lead in ways that live your values. Each of you is already and ever in motion. And we are calling on you to merge with those around you so that we are acting more visibly, more vocally, and more powerfully than ever before. And as we form into an unstoppable force that children and families need, I want you to think about it as like an ocean. We often talk about movements as waves of change, but what gives an ocean its power? What makes it unstoppable? First, its vast scale. A single drop of water isn't unstoppable, but together, aligned and moving with purpose, those drops become something much more formidable. The Ascend community is that kind of force. We are more than 1,000 changemakers strong. Ascend serves as a gateway, and well beyond our fellows, as spectacular as you all are, and you all know that. But each of you offers incredible imagination and intellectual capital, as well as access to more networks, from the National Conference on Mayors, the National League of Cities, to Head Start centers across communities throughout our country. And I challenge anyone to play 6 degrees of separation with Ascend. And it's more than just size. We have critical connection, not just critical mass. We're playing chess, not checkers, and ready we are to activate the power of our network of networks. The Ascend community over time has changed the way institutions think about and act for families. Together, we have transformed human services to focus on human potential, catalyzed a wave of public sector innovation, lifted up and embedded the power of lived experience and expertise in decision-making. We've taken lessons from the pandemic and redefined how we are thinking and serving family mental health. And collectively, we have advanced 2-generation strategies throughout early childhood up through post-secondary systems at every single policy level. Second, the ocean is always in motion. Even when it looks calm, it's still working. Waves are forming, currents shifting, tides rising and falling. Movement is happening even if we can't always see it. And the same is true in our work. Progress isn't always visible, but that doesn't mean we're not advancing. And like the ocean's powerful currents that run beneath the surface, our community is always learning and connecting. Even in quieter seasons, we are moving. We are moving forward, deepening relationships, iterating on what works, laying the groundwork for the next greater transformation. There is rest in this work, but never stillness. VisionXChange is our chance to see where we need to build and where we need to rest in the trough of the wave, gathering our energy for the next big push. And finally, the ocean responds to the ecosystem without losing its core. It adjusts to the gravitational pull, temperature, wind. It doesn't resist these forces. It moves with them. And it remains powerful because it's adaptable. In one of our seminar texts, Ruth Allen shares a quote from Linda Hogan, a Chickasaw novelist, who says, "To enter stone, be water." That's the kind of leadership we're called into now. We are navigating profound shifts, culturally, politically, institutionally, and we need to do so with clarity and integrity. We are not static, we are not waiting, we are moving, and we are paying close attention to what the movement and the moment is asking of us. And we do so with our values fully accounted for, from equity to justice. We've achieved together national recognition for the tremendous and untraditional two-generation field and movement we've built. We've unlocked more than $600 million in public and philanthropic investments to realize our shared North Star. Now is the time for us to organize and optimize to achieve something bigger than any one organization or leader could alone. At Ascend, we are co-designing a national strategic agenda for families that, when achieved, state by state, respecting tribal sovereignty, honoring indigenous wisdom, will not just move the needle, but will fundamentally change how we show up for children and families. This is a plan. We got some work. This is a plan of action informed by the people doing the work. All of you in this room, also the network partners, parents, philanthropists, and public servants who make up our entire Ascend community. Our agenda will be rooted in what families need most and want most, and what we know works. It is already underway, whether it's redefining maternal and infant health through the birth justice and equity movement, to getting direct cash to families, empowering them to control their own economic destinies. Right now, my friends, it's game time. It's time to put points on the board and post real wins. Right, Greg? In January, little hooch. In January 26th, we're going to unveil a values-based agenda that will align and amplify our voices at the Aspen Forum on Children and Families. We've been building for this generational moment of opportunity and the chance to lead and act together. Our next chapter starts now. We have the gift of the present to guarantee the future. You're invited here to contribute something bigger, to lend your insight, your imagination, with the goal of realizing the full intellectual, talent, and social capital here in this room and across the Ascend community. Now, I just want to double-click for a second on the talent capital theme, and I'd like to take this opportunity to recognize the Ascend team who are with us here in the room tonight. They have designed with great care and an experience to ensure that each one of you feels replenished, respected, resplendent, and ready to roll. And so I'd like to invite the Ascend team to stand and for all of us to express our love and gratitude to you. Now, as I wrap up this evening, I'm just casually reminded of the words of Albert Schweitzer, who came to Aspen in the early days when the Institute was just a beginning ripple in the vast ocean. And what he said was, in everyone's life, at some point, our inner fire goes out. It is then burst into flame by an encounter with another human being. We should all be thankful for those people who rekindle the inner spirit. My hope is that you both meet that person and are that person for each other. It is only together that we can go the distance. And if you hear Alberto Rios's words from the text, you are the breaking news of the country. You are the good ones who have come forward. So I thank you again for all you do every day to build the world all of our children and families deserve and dream about. Never doubt, question, or underestimate how much your heart, your mind, your health, and your leadership matters. Never forget, like the ocean, we are unstoppable. Let's go, team. Thank you. Thank you, thank you. And so we are going to move to like, what does it look like in action? So I'm delighted to bring up two fabulous fellows, and I'll be Dr. Nate Chomilo, Mayor Melvin Carter. But these two gentlemen, like everyone in this room, anyone could be having this conversation. But one of the reasons for Nate and Melvin that we thought was so important is when I think about what's happened over the past years in the Twin Cities and in the state of Minnesota, from outrageous, unacceptable political violence and assassination or murders. I think in some ways the Twin Cities calls a certain moral question and an epicenter for us as we think about both the good and the bad. Because yes, there have been incredible challenges, but what we have also seen is incredible leadership taking head on with racial inequity at the center and thinking about culture and language and community, redefining Medicaid, health, like Dr. Chomilo. When I think about Mayor Melvin Carter, who really is the best mayor of America, how Melvin has led such incredible crisis where many other leaders sort of got quiet. And from whether the murder of Mr. George Floyd or the recent political assassinations, Melvin didn't stay at home, even when he was worried about his family. He was out in the community. And for some leaders, you don't get a choice. But yet Melvin and Nate and Joe Hobart and Gloria Perez and many of the other fellows in the Twin Cities and in the state of Minnesota are showing different ways of leading, being, and that really redefine courage and conviction, but not losing the joy and not losing the story, and they are building hope. So these are two rock stars. And so, Nate, Melvin, come on up.
All right, can y'all give it up for one
Yeah,
more time for one of the most
One more time,
unstoppable
one more time.
human beings on the planet, the Ann Mosley. All right.
We thought that music was going to go a bit longer. We had a dance-off planned. So we'll have to do that later. But again, thank you so much, Ann. It's such an honor to be up here in front of this amazing room and have a conversation with someone. We are both very busy, in our careers, both busy in our lives as our most important title as dad and husband. And so we're going to talk about some things that I've just been really interested in talking to you about for some time now. And picking up where Ann left off, this idea of coming together and being unstoppable, right? And so when we think about coming together, you are someone who I have always admired for your ability to bring folks together across difference. And one of the things that I really reflected on in my own fellowship journey, so Callus Collective, CC, whoop whoop. If anyone knows, Ann actually did our cohorts message during it, so just saying that. But I was reflecting on some of my own kind of journey and the folks in the community who just inspired me so much. And so I started in 2023 because my family had started observing Kwanzaa for a bit, wanting to reflect on who are leaders in the community that reflect the values of Kwanzaa. And I did my LinkedIn post, and the first one is Umoja, which is unity, right? Coming together and striving to maintain unity as a family, as a community, as a nation, and a race. And so you were the first person I thought of and shared, and I actually wanted to read what I wrote down because it was much more eloquent than trying to do it from memory. But Mayor Melvin Carter almost immediately came to mind when thinking about today's principle, Umoja. Umoja is both a principle and a practice, and Mayor Carter exemplifies both, whether it's through speaking to other leaders around the country about his belief in the power of people, unified for a better community, or how he has demonstrated the transformative power of unifying his community through programs like St. Paul's College Bound Initiative, universal basic income, or forgiveness of medical debt. Mayor Carter, in many ways, embodies Umoja and gives me hope that what unites us is stronger than what seeks to divide us. So I'm hoping we can start there by sharing what you see in the power of bringing folks together.
No, I appreciate that. First things first, second to none. So much more noise than your cohort. I don't know. No, it's beautiful to be here, and I love the opportunity to be. I absolutely love this space, and I'm not like a fellowship person. I've shared this before. Like Lori emailed me 10 years ago and said you're invited to join this cohort, and I didn't respond to the email, and she emailed me again, and she called like, what's going on? And like we're all busy. Like I don't need a whole bunch of readings, and I don't need a whole bunch of and I don't need to feel inspired by somebody else. Like I'm always stressed about. And I remember walking into that space, and Ann, I imagine you remember saying this. Ann said, "I want you to be inspired, but I need you to kick some ass." And I was like, "Oh, these are my people." So it's lovely to be here. Our administration is rooted on a simple principle, and that is every decision is made to benefit the decision maker. That every decision a human being ever makes is made to benefit the decision maker. So for those of us who want the policies and the resources that come out of City Hall to benefit young people more, people of color more, seniors more, low-income communities more, whatever it is more, then the onus is on us to bring in a broader set of young people of color, low-income, senior, whoever it is, decision makers. And so, and that to me is the only route I can think of to make it last, make it something that continues to exist beyond kind of our small amount of time that we get here. So it's why we've centered our administration around this notion of trying to bring people together, trying to say, how do we, every member of my cabinet has been hired through what we call a community-based hiring process. We bring young people and seniors and city employees and folks together to source candidates and, look through resumes, and they do the first round of interviews. When I seated my cabinet at the beginning, there was this newspaper article that said my cabinet was the most diverse in the history of our city. And somebody said, "How did you do it?" And I laughed, and it's like, we're a diverse city. Like, you have to, how did you do it your way to a non-diverse, all-white man's cabinet? Like, if you just, let the brilliance of the city shine, it'll be naturally diverse, right? And so things like that we try to do, whether it's building our budget together, whether it's building our approach to public safety, literally with Black Lives Matter activists sitting at the same table as the police union president, raising the minimum wage to $15 an hour with the Chamber of Commerce right at the table with labor leaders and folks like that. The goal is to say this is a table this is a community that's big enough for all of us. I think some of that comes from in a lot of ways I grew up. When we look at the lines that divide us. In a lot of ways, I grew up on both sides of some of those lines. I was a young black kid, driving my city at one point in time. I was also at that same time the son of a police officer, as you know. And so I sort of lived two realities, and a lot of these kind of concepts that we talk about as though they are mutually exclusive, entirely different universes. If that was true, then I literally wouldn't be able to exist. So I really, really believe in the genius of what happens when people can come together.
Yeah, and so picking up on that two lines thing, because certainly I've talked about that a lot too. As the son of Cameroonian immigrants, growing up biracial black in predominantly white spaces, you really do learn to live and see other people's perspective. I think is one of the things. It's a talent that I've absorbed by necessity. And so one of the things is when you bring all these people with diverse perspectives together, not everyone has had that chance, that opportunity because of our segregated society, right, to understand and think of different perspectives. And that can fracture, cohesion. It can kind of threaten, solidarity that is really important to kind of move together. If you're thinking about how do you actually create an unstoppable force, you have to be cohesive. You have to have solidarity. So I found this really great article from Robert Johnson Foundation's blog that talked about the importance of funding transformative solidarity, because it's just that important as you're talking about, if you change the system, the long-term impact that has. So can maybe you speak a little bit to how you get all the people in the room, how are you finding ways to build that solidarity and that connection?
Yeah, our goal isn't to make it easy. I think if it's easy, at some point you say it challenges the solidarity, but it's not solidarity if it hasn't been through anything. You know what I mean? It's not real. And one of the things that I've learned is the extent to which we create massive amounts of predictable and avoidable conflict in the name of avoiding conflict, right? Because I don't want to create conflict now, so I'm going to create 10 times the conflict next week, right? And unless next week I can put it off to 100 times the conflict the week after that. Like, we create like these just collision courses for ourselves that are unnecessary. And one of the things that we find out, and Ann mentioned George Floyd, who was killed in our sister city right across the Mississippi River from us. And one of the most phenomenal things that as we were at some of those protests, and, we obviously have police officers who work for us. And I said about, early on, pre-George Floyd, look, after George Floyd was killed, a CNN anchor asked me, what are you going to do differently now that this happened? I said, nothing. And they said, nothing? What do you mean, nothing? I said, well, the most important thing you have to know about the murder of George Floyd is how historically unsurprising it is. And so the things that need to be done differently, we started doing before he was killed in the first place. And that's something that was really important to me. And frankly, not because of the skin color that I bring into my office, but the lived experience I bring into my office. Because when we talk to those young folks, I can go story for story with them about being pulled over and knowing I wasn't speeding. I don't remember the question you asked me.
No, you're on there. So you're talking about and sharing your lived experience and how
Yeah.
you're trying to help folks see other perspectives,
Oh,
right?
and thank you. That's what I was going to say. Like, the staunchest, Blue Lives Matter folks, what they wanted for Derek Chauvin is the exact same thing that I wish George Floyd could have had. Like, they're like, he needs to have his day in court. Yeah. You can't be judge, jury, and executioner. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like literally all of the things that they were were all of the same things. And it goes both ways, because some of the activists, some of the people I know and love, as they were looking at police officers, as they were looking, we had protests where people throwing rocks at police officers. And it's a crazy world where it felt risky for me to stand up and say, hey, stop throwing rocks at police officers. And I ended up telling someone, I thought we were fighting for a world where nobody gets to throw rocks at anybody. You know what I mean? And so that's part of what we try to do is build space where we can understand it may seem like we're complete opposites and we're from different universes, but at the end of the day, what most human beings want, it's not all that different.
And so that kind of builds into your own experience with your father, and his legacy in St. Paul, in his work towards community safety. Your mother being the first Black county commissioner, right? And her work as a public servant, as an educator. Can you maybe keep sharing a little bit more about how that has informed your vision of what it means to bring folks together to create unstoppable movements?
Yeah, it's funny. I always thought that if I could figure out how to be the yin and yang of my parents, that would be probably the most balanced human being that ever existed, right? My mother was the first Black county commissioner in the state. All through COVID, I was the mayor. She was the chair of our county board, so we got to work together really, really closely, obviously. My mother is the quintessential diplomat, right? And she is always negotiating. She's always trying to find, I'd come home from school and have gotten in a fight, and she'd be like, what do you think the other child was thinking? You know what I mean? How do you think that other child experienced? I'm like, I don't care, Mom, how the other child. My father, on the other hand, my father's rule when I was a kid is if I came home, other kids would be like, he hit me first, right? If I came home and said that, my dad would be like, why the hell you let him hit you first? You know what I mean? And so my dad was the complete opposite. So my parents are literally the diplomat and the warrior, and kind of to a fault, both of them. And I said this in front of them, kind of to a fault. But it comes together because my father was a police officer who founded this organization called Save Our Sons. And Save Our Sons was born from moms literally telling him somebody's got to save my son, right? And we'd be in the house on a Friday night and on a Saturday night, and we'd be having pizza night, whatever, and the phone would ring, and multiple times we experienced somebody calling up and saying, hey, my son is holed up and the police are outside. He's not going to surrender himself to anybody but you. And my dad would get up and go out and do that thing, you know what I mean? But the police line at the time, these moms would come and be somebody's got to save my son. And the police line at the time was, well, ma'am, if he breaks the law, call us and we'll arrest him, right? And that's not what moms were looking for, strangely. And so they built this organization of men who would literally do anything for these young men. You know what I mean? And it's amazing to see where some of those young men went on. By contrast, my mother was a teacher. And she started this arts organization, this edutainment organization, to try to trick kids into learning through arts, right? And she would create all these like arts experiences and connect people. And one of the fascinating things that I realized is, and this is, I think, definitive for my work, is we have two different universes of children. There's the children who were in Arts Us, my mom's organization, who would be like, you can go to college, and we're going to take you to Ghana for the International Storytelling Festival, and you're going to be the next mayor, you're going to be the whatever. And then there's the kids that were in my dad's organization, and we're like, try to stay out of juvie this weekend, right? And we didn't have a connectivity, right? Like, our highest expectation for these kids is just try not to go to jail. You know what I mean? And that's like really messed up. So like thinking that whole thing together is very much what I think both from their styles to the actual content of their work is where I try to live, and I do a okay job some days.
I say more than okay. Folks notice I cheered as the best mayor, and I don't even live in St. Paul, so I'd say more than okay.
I appreciate that.
So that approach, then I think really
I gotta say, there's some pretty good mayors around the country, though.
being very humble. So that approach, I think really serves you well in times of disruption, right? When kind of things are shifting. And you're trying to kind of help navigate and lead folks through seeing both what is lacking and what is still possible, right? And as mayor, you've been the mayor of St. Paul through lots of disruption.
None of that was on the flyer when I signed up.
Exactly, none of it. And so even with all that, George Floyd's murder, COVID-19, and what we've been going through so far here in 2025, it really feels like it's different to me, right? And I'm going to tell you why. To me, it feels different because I sit in spaces, and right now, with a lot of leaders, I don't know exactly where they stand, right? We talk a lot about values and being tested, but we are seeing, leaders throw our trans kids and undocumented citizens under the bus because they think it's a quicker route to power, to position. We are seeing corporations who, many came to Minneapolis and said, hey, we believe in Black lives and we believe in racial equity, and at the hint, the drop of any pressure, are throwing DEI under the bus. And really, for me, one of the kind of most challenging things in the moment is, as a pediatrician, as a father, seeing our ongoing funding of genocide and us being unwilling to just say, let's put the brakes on, let's stop, let's actually find a different solution here, while children are the ones suffering the most, right? And so, with all that, it's hard to understand where you stand with folks, and folks, with your values stand, where their values stand. How are you navigating this, in addition to everything that comes at you each day, having maybe some of those same thoughts, if you are?
Yeah, it's a complex question, and we have 9 minutes and 30 seconds left. The North Star for me is this. We have people all the time. My role when I was in the fellowship was as executive director of the Minnesota Children's Cabinet, working for our former governor. And before that, I was a young city council member building our St. Paul Promise neighborhood. And so I've sort of fallen into education somewhat by accident. And from one role to the next, people, like, for 20 years have asked me, like, I get up and speak at panels or forums, whatever, and people, Mayor, what's one thing? Like, what's one thing we can do to fundamentally transform the prospects for, low-income children in America? And I always tell them, the good news is I do have an answer. I do think that there is one thing that we can do to transform the lives of children in America, and that is to stop pretending that the challenge is to find one thing that we can do. Because here's the thing. Like, if you have children, right? Like I have a kiddo who's going to be in kindergarten next month, right? And where she's concerned, my goal isn't to find one thing that I can do to help secure her future. It's to find what? Everything on the planet that can possibly kind of get her head. And so what we try to do in St. Paul is say, what if we treated a whole community of kids like we loved them? And that means a lot, and it makes the roads kind of clear in a lot of ways. So you mentioned College Bound St. Paul. We start every child born in our city with $50 in a college savings account, and I mean every child. In St. Paul, if you have a baby in St. Paul and you don't want your child to have a college savings account, there's an application to fill out to not have a college savings account for your child. For real, you mentioned we took about $1 million in American Rescue Plan funding, and we're using it to purchase and eliminate over $100 million in medical debt that our residents owe, right? People look and say, why'd you do that? And it's crazy. If everybody whose debt we paid off was last name Chomilo, you'd have no problem with it, right? It'd be a no-brainer. You might want to know if it's legal, right?
Yes. Yeah,
but that wouldn't be a deal breaker, right? You'd be like, let's try it, right? And even like where public safety is concerned, we start talking about reimagining public safety, and people are like, I don't understand what that is. And I was like, yes, you do. Like, when it comes time to keep your kids safe, when we go to a political debate, anytime we talk about public safety, we're talking about police and prisons and prosecutors. But if I say, like, tell me about your kids' safety, you're going to tell me about seat belts and gates on the stairs and outlet covers. You're going to tell me about how you do every single thing you can possibly think of to transform the environment so nothing bad ever happens in the first place, so we never have to call 911 in the first place. And if I tell you my job is my plan to keep your child safe is to make sure we get an ambulance or in a police car and a fire truck there as soon as possible after something terrible happens to me, you'd be pissed. And that's what we're seeing in community. And I think it's ultimately that we've mistaken emergency response, which is important, which is sacred, which is critical, but we've mistaken it for public safety. That's not safety. That's emergency. It's important. It's a part of our safety framework, but it's not a safety framework. So that to me is the guiding light. And it makes a lot of things super duper clear when you say, like, how do I approach, like, literally, like, the children whose name I know, whose faces I see. When we get off the stage, I'm going to call Amila and tell her good night, because she's going to have a different night if I call her and tell her good night than she will if I don't. And what does it look like for every child to get that treatment from their community that she gets from me?
And what I hear you saying is, being really clear in what your values are. Right, and then orienting folks around them, reminding them, and bringing them to light, and doing it in a way, the kind of the struggle I've seen is getting folks to consistently stand up and say their values, right? Because they aren't real values if you get tested and you retreat from them to comfort, to something that's perceived as safety, right?
And let me say, I think that can be two different things. Saying your values and living your values can be two different things. Because, like, in the political frame, sometimes it's like, and, part of me, it's almost football season, so I use a lot of, like, football metaphors. But, like, sometimes I feel like the job of that some of the folks push us to, it's like, if I was a football coach and it's like, just running the plays isn't good enough, right? I need you to, like, hold up a sign that says, this is the play I'm about to run. You know what I mean? But if I do that, then the defense will be ready and it won't succeed. So I just want, like, you said two things. You said declaring your values, but you also said living your values. And to me, living your values is far more important, and not backing down from that fight is far more important. And sometimes that means, figuring out, there's a story about Whitney Young, right? Who was running this school, this agrarian school for black kids, and the funders would come in town and they'd show them how, they were learning how to plant, and showing how they were learning how to build, and showing how they were learning how to paint. And the white funders would come and they'd go, oh, that's very good, and they'd leave, and the cars would go, and they'd be like, all right, get back in calculus class, right? Because they were teaching all of it. You know what I mean? So I just wanted to say that to me, because I think there's a balance there where we have leaders who I'm never trying to be the loudest tweeter in the room. You know what I mean? My goal is, if I can quietly keep my hand in the cookie jar for those kids, I'm totally happy with that.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think for me, something that's helped me kind of get more concrete with it. There's this book I'm just about a quarter into by Dr. Sunita Shah called Defy. And she proposes a new definition of defiance as to live in accordance with your values when there's pressure to do otherwise, right? And so I think, that to me is like, and it can show up in moments small and big, right? But are we continually asking ourselves that? Are we seeing the organizations that we work with and alongside and part of, are they doing that as well, right? And really kind of, to be unstoppable, you're inherently going to have to defy, like, that's inherent. If you have a mission, there's going to people that are going to try and tell you what you're doing isn't right, or that's not the way it's always been done. My favorite kind of phrase, working at the state. And so you have to learn how to continue to defy in a way that, again, makes your values presence known, right?
Without a doubt, and I was sharing this anecdote at this table. 2 words that I'm fascinated about, and I always get like crowdsourced answers. Somebody give me a definition of the word precedent. The way things are always done. Somebody give me the definition of the word insanity. Right, doing the same things over and over. And so oftentimes I think governance is the process of all of us getting together and systemically doing the same things over and over again, like by definition, right? Like while being curious why there's not a different result. And I think you're right, there is a lot of pressure, and that pressure can be too much. Like one of the things that I've learned is like just how much inertia a thing can get standing still. Like just how much inertia the status quo can have just standing still right there. And one of the things that I've realized is I can't push that train backwards on the train track. I need a train behind me, right? And so we're like, and we talk about like courage, and one of the things that we've completely like redefined like what our public safety framework is in St. Paul. 2025, we have 2 gun homicides this year in St. Paul because we've pushed so hard on public safety. When we started doing that, though, some of my like colleagues and like some of my allies are like, "Oh, that's really courageous. How are you finding the courage to do this thing?" And I didn't experience it as courage. A couple of years ago, while I was mayor, my nephew got robbed at gunpoint in the city that I lead. And my nephew, Roy, I told you this is about the kids we know and love. My sister had to get in her car and drive around the block to give my nephew the courage to just walk his dog. And to me, the notion that you think the threat of losing a couple of votes is anywhere on the Richter scale compared to the threat of that happening to my nephew or my daughters or one of their friends or one of their classmates, or like it's just not. It doesn't even exist. So to me, it's about staying connected to the community like aggressively staying connected to the community that sent me here. It's about not letting the world inside City Hall define the reality that I bring outside City Hall. It's about maintaining that allegiance to those people who sent. And sometimes the allegiance to the people who sent me means they're kicking your butt. You know what I mean? And I have to figure out how to turn off the but defensive nature in me and actually hear. And that's one of the things I got from my mom. I call it like panning. My mother has we'll be someplace and somebody will say something. They'd be crazy or yelling or shouting or crying or whatever. And like we'll walk away and she'll be writing down. I'll be like, what is that? She'll be like, this is my notes. Like there's policy implications of this conversation. I'm like, you found that in that? Are you kidding me? But like every single human being has value. Every single human being has value. Every single human being has value. So my challenge as we think about it, because to me, one of the most different things about this moment is how hard it is for me to just hold on to a little bit of hope, how hard it is for me to hold on to a little bit of motivation, right? And one of the things that we're trying to rehearse is how do we show up and part of what we're defying is the pressure to yell back, is the pressure to be just as intolerant of that person because he has on a red hat. I don't even care what the red hat says. Just red hats are out, right? But you know what I'm saying? Like, is the pressure to think I know the answer, not you, because what I'm mad at you is because you think you know the answer, not me. So like, how do we break? So that's one of my big things is like, if you want to break a cycle, you have to break a cycle. And that's hard to do.
And let me say the piece too of I just learned this 5 minutes ago, and now I know the best and know the most, and I'm going to be intolerant of the fact that you are just learning it now too, right? Like, and so I really try to think of like my own journey of critical consciousness, and like if folks would have treated me as I learned about how structural racism works growing up in predominantly white spaces, right? How my being a male and the role of misogyny in our society works. if folks had been intolerant of me entering these spaces, I wouldn't be on the stage today because I would have given up. It's like, what's the point of joining along? And so how do we create those spaces to have that, it's sometimes courageous to be graceful, give grace with accountability, I want to say.
Honestly, God, I think so much of it is just do unto others as you would have others do unto you. You know what I mean? Recognize others' humanity as you would have them do unto you. Allow others to move you and to change you. Allow yourself to be open. My challenge to all my constituents right now is the next time you're in a conversation with somebody who's sure you're not listening to them, who's sure you won't let yourself be moved by them, surprise them and see what happens. It's not always golden, I promise you. But every now and then, like some really amazing things happen as a result of that if we really practice. And it doesn't have to be in the nation's capital. It doesn't have, I'm confident it won't start in the nation's capital right now. But it can start at your table. It can start in your family. It can start in your office. It can start, in your classroom. It can start in those spaces. And one of the amazing things about this network that we've got here is if we if we all go back to wherever we came here from and aggressively stubbornly commit ourselves to holding space and creating space, we would impact a whole lot of things. Because that word unstoppable, so much of what's happening to us right now is dependent on us standing down. And so to me, the question isn't, can they stop us? The question is, will we stop?
100%. And I just wanted to, I guess we're getting the cue to wrap up here. So, you talked a little bit about hope, right? And the struggle it is to find hope in times like this. And I've shared similar, struggles with my therapist. And one thing that she has, helped me see is, just reading from the words of others. It's like sitting with your elders and understanding what they went through can be a source of hope. And earlier this year, I was reading a lot from Martin Luther King Jr.'s Where Do We Go From Here? Chaos or Community, which, if folks aren't familiar, he wrote in 1966 and 67, right after the passage of the Civil Rights Act and the Voting Rights Act, when there was a lot of the same backlash that we're seeing right now. And from that, there's this story that I've been telling. I told it in all our equity forums this year. Because it just really resonates for me in the work that we do. He talked about, and for folks who traveled in by plane today might experience some of this too. He was on this plane traveling from New York to London and took about 9 hours to get there and then 12 hours on the way back. And so he was asking the pilot, why did it take so long to get back? And the pilot said, well, on the way there we had a tailwind, and on the way back we had a headwind. Right? And so he internalized this to say, at times, in your life as you're doing this work, you're going to feel some tailwinds of success and triumph, and then some headwinds that are trying to slow you down. And as you journey across life's great Atlantic, not to be discouraged, because the other thing the pilot said was, don't you worry, the engines are strong enough to get us there. Right? And I really feel like here in this room, we have the engines that are strong enough to get us there. As you're saying, as long as we don't stand down, we have the engines that are strong enough. So it might take a little longer than we thought, maybe 12 months, 24 months, 4 years ago, but we're strong enough to get there together because we are unstoppable.